Hey everyone! I am not going to do a countdown, but you are about to be introduced to the sweetest Mia Burke, and so let me do a quick movie trailer for you to enjoy. Oh no! She disappeared. You guys, this is really happening right now. There are so many Wi-Fi glitches, and I have the utmost grace for Wi-Fi glitches because I was just in Mexico in the middle of a Cat 5 storm, and I dropped all of my clients for Core Creatives. So I get it, and we're going to bear with her, and we're going to enjoy what it is that God has to bring to the table today. So Mia, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I was just saying before we got on here that it's nice to just be with somebody that I can just be with. Sometimes in the interview style format, especially with podcast guests coming from around the world, I don't know everyone. And so I'm kind of like peeling back the onion layers, right? Where here I can just dive in and enjoy our friendship, but also being able to just serve the community in a beautiful way based on the heartbeat that has been deposited specifically to you and you alone. And so for those of you who don't know Mia, hopefully she'll jump back on here. She has Bible and Pop Culture magazine. She is not only the curator for it, but just the curator and the CEO, the designer of all that it is. So I'd love for you to just jump in, Mia, and share a bit about who you are and how this vision got deposited into your spirit.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Mia Burke. Thanks so much for having me on. Like Tamra said, I'm the Bible and Pop curator and CEO. It all kind of started, I taught college for about 9 years in Hawaii, and we taught the Bible and Pop class. And once my husband got transferred to Florida, just kind of sad that I wasn't connecting with my students anymore and the content, and just kind of decided, oh, let's do this as a blog, and got super encouraged by our students to do something more with it. They wanted to keep contributing. They wanted to keep thinking. They wanted to keep having the conversation. So just kind of a handful of students and I started and have become friends and community members, just having conversations together about the Bible, about Christianity, about spirituality through cultural artifacts and Bible and pop culture.
It's so good. You guys have to check out, like right now, go to Bible and Pop magazine. It's bibleandpop.com, right? I'm not missing. Yeah.
Yep, perfect.
And I had an opportunity to write with you guys twice now that you guys have been alive and in action. And I love even with the online space, there's an additional pivot. Even if you're in an online space and 2020 happens, we're constantly pivoting no matter what. So I don't think it's an ebb and flow of 2020 per se or COVID-19 for you guys because you've already been there. But talk to us about what the heartbeat of the magazine is, this concept of conversations around the Bible. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so one of my concerns is just this new...
Stay tuned. She's telling us about her concerns and how is their conversation around the Bible. So stay here.
Sorry about that. So just kind of what it means, this new iteration of church. And one of mine, my master's is in communication, and just seeing this whole shift in our culture going from talking with people to talking at them or to them. And I'm just concerned with this lack of just exchange of ideas to winning. And I just wanted, this is my own small way, and the community members that are joining us, our own small way of starting to have conversations again, starting to have conversations that just don't seem to be happening in the church very often, around the culture, around what's popular, around what does the Bible say about it, what does God say about it, what does that mean for me living this out, trying to be a disciple of Christ. So we just want to start conversations. That's all we're here for. We're here to just engage each other, hear what you have to say and learn from it, hopefully hear what I have to say and be open and learn from that as well. And that's just kind of the heartbeat behind what we're doing.
It's so good. And I feel like the conversational piece is something, because often you're preached at, right? Versus where's the dialogue conversation. And while there might be small groups, or there might be ministry opportunities for us to share and kind of dive into that, it doesn't happen in such an organic way that allows people really an expression of self, while also understanding pop culture. Like, this is the whole concept of the name that I think is so brilliant, because we are living in a time and in a season where secular is colliding with church every single day. And so it's a matter of understanding where in that is the heart of the Father, where in that is good, where in that is biblical, and then where in that it hasn't been skewed. And so having these deep conversation makes way for there to be a reality, for there to be a dissection of biblical word and biblical understanding, and then applying it to right now time, because the Bible, we know, is an alive piece. It's a word, right? That's everlasting. And yet, how does it make sense to us in today's time frame? So talk to us, like, what are some of the topics of conversation? What are some of the different themes that you guys have done for the magazine? And again, you guys, this is so typical. Me and Mia have been trying to get together to have this conversation for so long, and now this is happening. It's okay. So we're talking about what type of conversations and topics are you really diving into?
A lot of last year was spent just kind of figuring out who we are, what are the conversations we want to have. We talked a lot about purpose, and Tamra, you gave an amazing article looking at the Ikigai on purpose. We looked at, what is communication? What is culture? We looked at what's healthy. We looked at all kinds of things. This next year, I'm really excited about the topics, because we're getting a little more controversial now that we have kind of built that trust with our community. So we'll look at, like, the heavy burden of hate. We're going to look at unforgiveness and what does that mean for both sides of an issue. We're going to look at some fun things. We're going to look at travel. We're going to look at cars. We're going to look at music. Our January edition is the all skate edition, so it's just kind of whatever our collaborators come up with. But we're going to try to dig a little deeper than we did last year. I think the first year was spent building trust, that we could love our community, we could come alongside each other and have these difficult conversations and disagree well. And that's okay. It's not about proselytizing and convincing you, but just being open and, like you said, seeing what God has to say on issue, where is Jesus centered in our lives on the issue. So next year, I'm looking forward to challenging myself, challenging all of us as a team and our community about how do we disagree on a little bit tougher topics that have a little more impact. There's a little more skin in the game when you talk about hate and unforgiveness, or you talk about, how do you communicate in disagreement? So yeah, a lot coming up.
Definitely, like, again, a for now conversation based on everything that's just arose, but really it's not new. It's not new things, new problems, new difficulties, new trials. Nothing new is under the sun. That's been constantly coming into my frame of understanding, is realizing that these heavy conversations, these racial discrepancies, these the conversation of hate in and of itself is massive, is realizing that these aren't new, but there are new lenses by which we need to adapt and adopt, that is connected to the heart of the Father in order for us to move forward in what's ahead, versus sitting or resting in a comfort zone that is actually quite discomforting. Right. Like there's so much tension all the time. So allowing for a space like this, and I love it because it is the church, right? So instead of it there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? Dissection of the church in this specific piece, because it's not underneath a specific umbrella of belief system. It is the Bible. And therefore, there are so many people who can stand on and stand beside the Bible. And so that's where these conversations are coming into play. It's not just through the lens of the Southern Baptist Church or the Pentecostal Church or, any other, not even non-denominational. It's not even non-denominational, which I really love. It really has a constant conversation of openness. I think it's even going to be a gateway for non-Christians to come in and have a different perspective and a different taste in their mouth on what is Christianity, because they're connected perhaps to the pop culture side of it rather than the Bible side of it.
Yes, definitely. And the other interesting thing that's happened that I was really surprised by is just the generational. We had a super interesting article last February, I think it was, on video games and role RPGs. And there was a boomer who wrote in to the millennial who wrote the piece, and she said, I just don't understand. I'm really struggling to understand where you're coming from. Can you kind of talk me through this? And the author came in and they had this amazing conversation in our comment section. And she's like, I still don't agree, but I now kind of understand. So now when I talk to my grandson, I can kind of see more where he's coming from in this. And so I was like, yes, that's exactly what we're going for. It's just been so interesting, the wide doctrinals, the wide generational, the wide interests, just to see all these groups of people come together around this innocuous topic, you know, this artifact of Star Wars, and we're talking about truth. And it kind of lets us all relax because we're talking about Luke Skywalker, right? We're not talking about me. So that's kind of the fun of using pop culture.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And I think we'll even beyond just the generational piece, there's, you know, the cross-ethnic group piece, but there is a worldwide expansion opportunity in that. And I think the next big vision for you guys could even be this language, like dropping just it being published in English, but published in Spanish and published in all of these different languages, allowing people to come in and really have this integration of community. And again, back to the church, like this is what the heartbeat of heaven is everyone, not just one perspective. So Mia, I love that this is like your baby, right? This has been your baby for the last 2 years. And I want to hear more from you, like Mia as the entity, Mia as the person who came to the table, whether as a professor in Hawaii or the Mia who just birthed this into being, because it takes a human to create, it takes a human to activate this massive vision that's within us. And God implanted the vision in a collective unit, right? Your students played a part in that. But what was the journey like for you to get to the place to even teach that class in the first place?
God has a sense of humor. I don't like to public speaking is not my thing. So he called me to be a teacher. So that was quite a few years of getting over the stage fright, getting over collecting my thoughts. And then just imbuing in me, there's a Hillsong song that says, Hosanna, and it says, I see a generation rising up to take their place in selfless faith. And I'm the mother of both a Z and a millennial. And to see Ayla and Liam coming into that generation, I want to be part of bringing you guys into the fullness of what God has for you. I'm an Xer, so I had my kids very young. But that was kind of my journey.
Hold tight, y'all. She's sharing about her journey right now. And I just think it's important for us to realize when we see this grandiose thing happen, when we see something come to fruition, that there's always a backstory. I'm such a guru for the backstory. So she's sharing.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
All right. So you're sharing about your kiddos and how that's a huge part of the passion and the why.
Right. I had always been in youth work ever since I graduated high school. Always worked in youth work. So I just have always had a passion, and that song just kind of called out the prophetic in me, saying, be a part of calling out this generation to take their place of what God has for you. Just physiologically, millennials and Z's brains look different than everyone else's. So when they've done the neurological scans, it's just wired differently. And that just always spoke to me that God must have something significant. And just the fact that it's under attack the way it has been in years past. So just really passionate about being part of calling the next generation forward. I've also read a really interesting book that says every 500 years, God has this rummage sale in the church, and it becomes a new iteration. And so I'm super curious as an academic, what does that look like? but I'm also one of those fear of missing out people. So I don't want to be on the sidelines as this new iteration starts to take shape. And I think COVID's been a big part of church is going to look different. It's going to be more relational. And I'm a big Francis Chan fan. And so, just that Acts 2 model of the church and just being part of facilitating conversation. And I'm just kind of a nerd.
No, I just love that so much. And I think it's so powerful. And for those who don't know Francis Chan or really Acts 2, I'd love for you to go into what is his methodology, what is his belief system, and how has it impacted you? Because I know it's impacted me, but I will let you share first.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, Francis Chan had this amazing Crazy Love platform that he spoke on for years. He wrote a book called Crazy Love, and just, calling us as the church back into being in love with both Jesus and our call, the Great Commission of making disciples of all men. And then I'm not sure the time frame, within the last 5 years, just this challenge to walk away from that mega pastor persona, that mega pastor trajectory, and going back into this small, intimate setting that Acts 2, where they just did life together. They had the hard conversations. They loved each other. They were there in the thick and the thin. They shared everything they had. And he's just really been calling for us to move back into that model of doing church, being the koinonia, being the church, as opposed to it being this location that we go to on Sundays and Wednesdays, or whatever your iteration of church is. So that just really, really spoke to me a lot, especially being in ministry for 26 plus years. It hasn't always been super fulfilling in some.
All right. So she's talking specifically about Francis Chan. I am such a huge fan. And for those that don't know, I actually had the beautiful opportunity to do this and actually grab hold of what Francis Chan's idea was by stepping away from the church that my family had attended for a few years and developing this concept of a home church and what that looked like alongside my pastor. You guys hear me talk about her all the time, my best friend Morgan and her husband Anthony, and they now are actually operating in a church setting again. And it was a 2-year duration of just, I think the ultimate word in that crazy love experience of Francis Chan is this intimacy. And this intimacy is ultimately, I think, the root of what Bible and Pop Culture magazine is allowing. It's creating more intimacy within the church because it is breaking down that division. It's cultivating these conversations. And there is nothing more intimate than inviting people, strangers, into your home, into the space that you sleep, into the place that you raise your children, and in having a conversation around, like, who is God to you? And what are your struggles right now? And like crying with someone on a couch and crying with them at your own altar, which was our fireplace, really, is realizing that there is nothing like the relationships that were established during that season are unmatched to any church relationship I ever had or community relationship I ever had. Does that mean that their church is wrong? No, it just means that the magnitude feels so big that the intimacy is then lost. And I want people always to know that my door is open, my couch is open, my fireplace altar is open. But in order to create those conversations, there has to be an open door. And I feel like that's what Bible and Pop is. It's an open door to have these intimate experiences with God himself, and to knock on his door and say, hey, I have a question for you. Hey, I'm curious about this thing. Like, just because he has the word doesn't mean that we are shut off from curiosity or that we're shut off from culture. Culture exists. God is in that very moment, like every moment of every human being that's a part of it. My kids, it's so interesting to look at life through their eyes, is like, did God create this or did man create this? And they do that about everything, from a car like the Tesla to an airplane. And I'm like, well, the God within the man created the thing. It's how men use the thing on whether or not it's a right or wrong thing. And so just dissecting that, I think, is a huge thing for us to do more often. Dissect and get curious with God, because he always has a response. He's waiting to answer the question. But if we just close off pop culture, it's secular, it's bad, it's wrong, then there's no dissection of, is it though? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really healthy conversation.
And another part of that is the Imago Dei. We are created in the image of our Creator. Therefore, he's a creative being. We are too. And creatively, co-creating with him in that process. We used to play that same game with our kids when they were little as well. And it was always fun because ultimately it all goes back to God. He created it. But man tapping into co-creating with him, whether it's a Tesla, like you said, or growing an amazing flower bed or whatever, it always goes back to the Creator.
Yeah, it's so good. And that's really my heartbeat for coming alongside creatives into their place of passion, into their place of calling, is knowing that God put in us these ideas, these visions, these gifts. It's not something that we need to control, because in fact, he's the one who already has laid the path for that excellence, for that vision to come to fruition. But it's a really amazing thing to understand that we truly are all creatives, and nobody is outside of that. Yesterday, I was in a conversation and the woman was talking about how she so desperately, her message that was gifted to God, from God to the church, is this understanding of beauty, that every single person, she specifically is called to women, every single girl, grandma, mom, whomever, has an elegance and a beauty that no other woman can tap into. And that's because God is that big. And so if we could recognize that our creativity, it should never be stifled based on what somebody else is doing, but instead it should flourish even all the more, because it's another perspective of the heart of the Father. It's another perspective of heaven. It's another necessary piece to the puzzle. And so beauty is similar to creativity, and we all are those things. We are creative. We are beautiful.
I love what Jeannie Allen says about beauty. She says it's the antidote to cynicism, and just it's so rampant in our culture right now to be cynical and skeptical, and just taking that moment to see the beauty in another person, and to see the beauty in nature, to see the beauty in, an art piece.
Yeah, it's so good. We play another game with our kiddos in this exact concept, is really dissecting when something is wrong or something is heavy or something seems like depressing. What is the good? Tell me the one thing that you do see that is beautiful, because it's in every single person. So if their feelings get hurt by somebody in their class, instead of being like, oh yeah, like let's justify that, which is constantly the conversation. Let's justify the wrong emotion. It's okay to be angry, we say, but what about also saying it's okay to love them even still? And so what's the good in that situation? Yes, that person hurt your feeling, but what do you love about them? What's something that you can think of that's a good-natured piece of who they are? And sometimes it's hard to do, especially for a 5, 6, 7-year-old, right? They're like, nothing. Yeah. But if you just,
I don't want to.
Yeah, you just take a second and really step back from the conversation, just like all of these conversations that are unfolding in the magazine, you can realize that there's a beautiful angle. And even if that beautiful angle that person has, that's very different and you don't agree with, it still is another lens. That is another focal point that we can tap into to expand our own belief system, our own understanding of love, our own understanding of intimacy. I can't tell if you're glitched or not. It's so funny.
Oh, sorry. What was the question?
Oh, I was just asking specifically, really no question. I was making a statement, but is realizing that we have just an ultimate opportunity as much as a responsibility in dissecting how it is that Bible and Pop magazine is doing it, but also just from your heartbeat of education. Like, I love that you are a natural inquisitive, right? Because inquiring and having that curiosity to spark conversation is really what's going to create deeper understanding and further intimacy.
And I think there's a piece to us, if we can hold space within ourselves to
Y'all, such apologies for anybody who's tuning in live right now. Mia is out of where she usually is, so we keep dropping.
Am I back?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mia.
Okay, sorry. I was just going to say, I think there's a beauty to holding space within ourselves to learn something new, to enlarge. There's not kind of like a mother loving her children. There's not just a piece of pie 100% that we can love. It's exponential. It's infinite. And I think learning is kind of the same way. Is even though I don't agree, I can at least look at it from your perspective and try to understand that. And my heart is always, what's the commonality? Even though we don't agree on this doctrinal issue, or we don't agree on what is beautiful.
I love that. I think that's a really interesting concept, because it creates the full pie, and it creates the full perspective. That's a really cool perspective to have, me. I love that.
Thank you.
Kind of gives you freedom from feeling right or feeling wrong. Like you don't have to be one or the other. It's kind of that idea. I always say that we're like, get to be both, and you get to be both, have this perspective and carry space for the other perspective. Mm-hmm. It's such a for now conversation that I am really curious about. Have you guys tapped into concepts of death or afterlife or suicide? Have you done any of that yet?
We have. Our October issue was totally on the afterlife. I've just noticed in culture that's a really big question. And I know, at least for the Christian perspective, it's something we look forward to. It's something we.
Shucks. There's such heavy stuff to be glitching in and out. I apologize for those that are tuning in. I'm like, this is such heavy stuff to go away like that. Cliffhanger.
From the Christian perspective, that's what we're moving towards. So it's already a belief system, in our worldview. But for the rest of the culture that may be agnostic or not a believer, what is that next step? And so what we did is we looked at cultural artifacts, from Beetlejuice to The Good Place to Ghostbusters. And we just kind of looked at, like, what does the Bible say about death? What is next? And why do we hold such sacredness for what is life? And so we just tried to kind of play around with it and have fun with a really heavy topic.
Wow, that's really interesting. I haven't tuned into that. I'll definitely have to open that up a little bit, especially from the lens of talking about like video games and stuff. It's so interesting that everything, I feel like, revolves around this create better life, right? Be fuller, have more energy, all of the things that these little video games are offering, and then it goes right towards the death piece. And so already implanted in my son's lens and view is this idea of life and death, and that's going to be consistent throughout his entire life. And as now an adult, seeing lives that are lost based on age, based on choice, it's really hard to dissect and even understand now as it was when I was little. I remember growing up and going to funerals all the time. I was surrounded by death when I was younger. And I have family members now who are experiencing this for the first time, where they're just being surrounded by death. But now these deaths don't seem like natural causes, and these deaths aren't existing because of, health related issues, they're choices. Mm-hmm. And so it's really heavy conversations that are being, put out in just a total different perspective that makes way for culture and Bible to coexist with more of almost an element of palpable truth, palpable taste. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we can try.
Yeah. This is driving me bonkers. All right, you guys. Heavy conversation.
Yeah, I think we can try. That's the other thing about pop culture, is we never come at it from this is the answer, because we don't know. There's so many different interpretations to scripture. We just start the conversation, and death is a hard one. It's no matter what age. I just had to, I'm also a writer in my other life and a producer, and I just had to write a short script on the same thing, looking at it from multiple age perspectives. And someone who's in their 80s and 90s looking at death sees it very differently than somebody who's 20, 21. So we just try to, look at it from perspectives and hope that we can come together as a community and look at all the different facets of it, and then do a takeaway of, oh, I never considered, what death looks like when you're in your 90s versus, somebody like me, I'm in my 40s. And that's just kind of the thing, is just, again, holding space to hear somebody else's, cut facet of the diamond. It's going to be different from every angle. And not making the judgment right or wrong. Of course, we'll have close-handed things that, doctrinally we're not going to, be heretical on. Right. But, for the big picture, it is hard. The issue getting ready to come out on December 1st, we're looking at memory and nostalgia and tradition. And we're asking, is memory reliable? Why is it that we hold on to these certain traditions? So I'm really excited to kind of explore that issue with people, is looking at what is it that we're holding space for? Why? And is it still serving us?
So looking to like the future of this magnitude of a beautiful work, I think it's insane. All of the different opportunities that exist within the one thing is how can somebody continue to integrate with you, and what can they expect long term from a magazine publication that is exclusively online, multiple writers. So if you're a writer or you're somebody interested in developing conversation and concept, it's an awesome opportunity to jump in and start having those conversations. But where do you see Bible and Pop going?
Our hope, we're shifting starting in January to more multimedia based, more video, more podcasting, more social media. The academic in my heart is breaking that not everybody reads, not everybody wants to read a 20-page paper. So I'm realizing that we need to kind of evolve as the culture evolves and speak the language that the culture speaks. So we're moving in that direction. We're moving in the direction of having, we already do a monthly coffee with Bible and Pop Culture with our host, Sabbath Kapahu. Mm-hmm. She is amazing. Tamra's been a guest on there. Yeah. So starting to have like live conversations. We're hosting them in all.
Yeah, so Sabbath is amazing. She was so good. And we had a great conversation just unpacking the article. So I love that you're going to go that way. That's actually even more so. Obviously, I've been vodcasting, if you will, for 2 years now, but realizing more than ever that video is taking over in that regard, and knowing that you have access points then. It's actually a freedom factor to realizing that it's not just written. It's going to be able to be broadcasted in so many different ways and connected to in so many different ways. So if our one job, no matter what our creative desire is to make disciples, as to, share the light and love of Jesus, then this is going to give you more of an opportunity, more of a leadway, segue to do so.
Yes, definitely. So we're just trying to be, kind of like Paul talks about in, I can't think it's Acts, where
cliffhanger. So many cliffhangers. I'm going to give her one more second.
Sorry about that. But be like Paul in Acts, where he actually went to the people, where he has the discussion, and I believe it's the Acropolis, to the statue to the unknown God. He understood the theology, he understood the culture, he understood the philosophy, and he could speak their language where they were. So Bible and Pop kind of trying to use that same model. We're trying to go to the street to have the conversations. So whatever that medium looks like, and we're trying as many ways as possible to have them live so that people can join in and have conversation. But then, you've always got the comment section and things like that where you can have the discussion later at your convenience if you missed the live. So
really cool. Well, you guys can absolutely connect, and they can read all of the past issues of the magazine. You got to check out December 1st when it comes out, and just stay connected to what's to come. I think that's a big piece of hope for us, to know that there are people having these conversations. There are organizations dedicated to kind of unpacking and making sense of the things that don't make sense. And allowing and giving space for people to have conversations until it does come into that view of clarity through the lens of the Lord. So I'm grateful for you and your team. I know you guys have worked so effortlessly over the course of the last couple of years, and I'm excited to see how it continues to grow.
Thank you so much. You have been a very integral part of that, and I appreciate you for everything you've collaborated with, and you've just given us great feedback. So thank you, Tamra.
It's going to be so cool. I imagine a Bible and Pop, Matt, like an entire conference for all the writers, all the readers, all of that stuff where everybody can come together, continuing to have these heavy conversations, but around ideas of pop culture. Oh my gosh, imagine like Star Wars and like just, I could see so many different things. It would be so funky and so fun. But also so purposed. And I think that's the heartbeat of what it is that you're doing, is doing it in a unique way that nobody's really tapped into, in my perspective. So thank you for saying yes to your God dream and really allowing God to move in this unique way.
Well, thank you. And I thank him, because it's all him. That's not what I would have pursued on my own. I would have stuck to being a little college teacher. So I'm happy.
So good. So good. All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry for all of the glitches. Soon.